I was like the lowest of the low. That was probably a low point of my life. I mean, I felt really devastated. I felt like I had screwed up my career and I didn't know how to get out.
Have you lost your spark you once had for your work? Did you lose yourself while climbing the corporate ladder? Do you question if this is really what you want to be doing with your life? What if you could start now, take action, and empower yourself to create work you love? Welcome to the Spark Your Power podcast, where we stop settling for what we have and find the power within us to create what we want. I'm your host, Jen Spainhour, career woman, career changer, and career empowerment coach. And I am on a mission to ignite your career success, purpose, and joy without compromise and on your terms. Listen in and get a front row seat to both high profile and everyday amazing women who are redefining what success looks like and sharing their secrets on how you can create a career that truly lights you up. I am so happy you are here. Are you ready? Let's dig in. Hello, and thank you for joining today. This is going to be a really special episode, and this is my interview with Shelley Haus, the former Chief Marketing Officer of Ulta Beauty. And the reason it's so special to me is because Shelley is no longer with us. Shelley fought a fight against cancer, unexpected, and she lost that battle. So it means a lot to me to be able to share it with you because she, first of all, she wanted so much to have an impact on people, especially people in their career. She was extremely passionate about the work she did. And she gives so many wonderful value add tips here. And she shares a lot about herself personally. And the thing about Shelley is that when she and I worked together in the past, and at one point she left the company we were both working for, and she got this job at Ulta Beauty. And she talks about this a lot in the interview. And we had drinks to celebrate her new job. And she said to me something I'll never forget. She said, "I was born for this job. I was born for this. That is how I want to feel. That's how I want you to feel." And I was like, give me some of that. I want that. And you know what? She was totally born for that job. And they miss her terribly there. She was always meant to be my first podcast interview. We were scheduled to do this on March 13th, 2020, and it didn't happen because of the pandemic, but I did it virtually with her in 2020. And I'm so glad I did because now I get to share a little bit of Shelley with all of you, and you can take all of the gold nuggets that she provides in this interview. The ups, the downs, the highs, the lows. She shares vulnerabilities, and it's really real. It's good stuff. So I know you're going to enjoy it. And this podcast is in memory of Shelley. And I feel like the best way that I can honor her and allow her to continue having an amazing impact on people is to share this with you. So please listen, enjoy, and please share this episode with others because she deserves that, you deserve it, and it's just gold. So thank you for being here and listening today. Let me introduce our awesome guest tonight. So I have Shelley Haus here, the Chief Marketing Officer of Ulta Beauty and my friend. So I would love to introduce Shelley, and I have so many questions for you. But just to start us off, in case anyone here doesn't know already what it is you do today. And then if you could just maybe give us a little bit of personal background about you, your family, who is Shelley?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I could go on for hours just about that question. But I have been at Ulta Beauty for 6 years, almost 6 years now. I started right after Thanksgiving on the Monday after Thanksgiving, which is kind of crazy in retail. Little did I know, because this is my first foray into retail. But over the last 6 years, started as a vice president, then SVP, and then last December was promoted to chief marketing officer, which felt pretty great until we went into this year and it went, woo, crazy. But
perfect time to be promoted.
Right, exactly. Perfect. This year is just how I planned it.
Right, exactly.
Picture perfect first year.
Yeah.
And I, on my team, have everything from PR to social media to influencer relations to two internal creative teams to customer experience, store design, consumer insights. It's just
teeny tiny little job. Teeny tiny little job.
Just an amazing team we've built over the past years, and I couldn't be prouder of the work that we've done. On a personal note, I am married to my high school sweetheart, and
such a story.
I know we've been together for over 30 years now, and married for 23. And he's a middle school teacher.
Nice.
So we have very different worlds that we live in, which is interesting, and I think complements each other really well, both from the type of person I am and the type of person he is, but also the jobs. I mean, just we can get into this when we get to it, but how do I do what I do? Well, he's a massive support. Yep. Because we have two boys, and I kind of mentioned Colin is my oldest. He's 20 and he's a junior at Michigan State University. And he is back there now living in an apartment. And then my younger one is one of the, class of 2020, everything evaporated right in front of our eyes, and graduated high school, with no graduation, no prom, no, it's been heartbreaking really for us. Mm-hmm. And now he started Michigan State University as a freshman, and he's down the hall.
Oh my God.
He's literally doing it here. And I've been joking that my husband and I are like the greatest college roommates ever.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I remember when we worked together years ago. So Shelley and I, our history goes all the way back to about 2005-ish.
Yeah.
We worked at Pepsi together, and then we worked again together at GFK. We have some GFK friends on the call tonight.
Yeah.
And I remember at GFK, and this was how many years ago? Like 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. Shelley's kids were quite younger at that time. They're older than my kids, but she was worried about them leaving for college like 10 years before they left for college. She's like, I'm going to miss them so much. So now you get longer.
I feel a little bit like those were the days of me being like Meg Ryan and When Harry Met Sally, when Billy Crystal says, "What, you're going to be 40 and when?" And she's like, "Someday."
Yes, exactly.
That's how I felt about my kids going to college. And now it's here. It's surreal. It's surreal.
She started when she was like 12 or something.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So I thought it would be great for us to dig in a little bit to your career journey. This is such a kind of a big question, but so what I often talk to people about is that our career is a journey. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And as we go through it, we learn new things about ourselves and about what we're best at doing. Put into the chat if you feel like you've learned so much over the course of your career that when you were first bright-eyed, bushy-tailed coming out of college, had no clue about. So maybe just, I know this is going to be a long answer because you've got a lot to share, but like we would love to just hear a little bit of how you got to where you are today and how that kind of path looked for you.
Yeah. I like the analogy of marathon, not a sprint, because one, yes, it's long. So that's like a marathon, but two, you have different parts. I hear from people who do marathons. I do not, but you have different parts where you don't know if you can do it anymore, and then you get another wind, and then so it's not only a marathon from a longevity standpoint, but I think this, like, sometimes you're in and sometimes you're out, and sometimes you're energized and sometimes you're not, and so that kind of like that part of the analogy, I think, is really important too.
Yeah.
You're like, can I do it? I don't know. Yes, I can. So, I think about my journey as chapters, almost like, now I look back and I could write a book.
Yes.
But I have more chapters.
Someday.
Yeah, I might. So speaking of that, I have more chapters to come, and what do those look like? And they might look, like a continuation of what I'm doing now, and they might look very different. I think about the things that I might want to do in teaching and writing and things like that, speaking. And, then when I look back, part of why I think about it that way now is because I think what I didn't know then is that it was going to be all of these chapters, and that was going to be okay. Because, you get to the end of one chapter and it feels odd and hard, and, maybe you don't want to go to the next, or maybe you do. But when I think about my chapters, it's like what I learned from each of the chapters along the way. So, I started at P&G, which was funny. My dad even jokes today that I was going to be like, he's like, you're going to be the most trained person that ever lived, because P&G is so into training and fundamentals. So that was, an incredible start to the book, because I felt like I learned a lot. I learned a lot from a lot of people who were teachers and great mentors. And I learned a lot about the fundamentals of advertising. I learned a lot about the fundamentals of, agency relationships. I learned about the fundamentals of consumer insights, all of these things that I think were so core. I learned about the fundamentals of writing, and being very simple in writing and very disciplined, which I think really helped me in the way that I think along my career. So then taking that, I had
Can I pause you for one quick second?
For sure.
I just want to let you know that I think there are some college students, and I think there's some college students listening tonight, both from Mary Lee's course that she teaches, and also there might be some other people who brought their college kids along. So I think what you just said, Shelley, is really important, because the first job that you take out of college is really helps set you up for success. And if there's an opportunity to work at these companies who are really good at what they do, and really train you in that way, not to mention that, but the network that comes with that grows with you through your career is so awesome. So that just is a consideration when you're thinking about your first job out of school.
I think two really great points there that I can give you a little bit more of my experience in. One, this idea of the people that you meet. My experience at P&G was the first time that I really understood that the people that you make an impression on, and the people that start to see your strengths and your differentiators, are the people then that are your bridge to future opportunities. I didn't really understand that, and I tell my kids that all the time, because I think that's really, really important. And then two, the fundamentals are super important. And then there's also, I remember learning a lot about humility during that time, because I always joke that I went from hero to zero, because I got an offer from P&G off the Wisconsin campus. I was the only undergrad that year. And I was like, I am it. And the job that they gave me was not good. Let's just say that. It really was terrible. It was, 2.5 years where, I wasn't in brand management yet. 2.5 years where I was like, whoa, what just happened? I thought I was on one path, and then all of a sudden I'm on this different path with a job from them that I really wasn't expecting, and it really doesn't suit me, and I just decided to stick with it for at least 3 years and learn as much as I could from a great organization. And it was humbling to go
That's
from
so
here
smart,
to here.
though. I mean, that mindset is so critical, right? Sometimes you're in a position that you just know deep down that there are lessons to be learned, even if you're not loving waking up for work every day in that particular chapter.
Right. And starting to set my sights on thinking about the next, what is it? What is it that I want? And I remember having a lot of conversations with my parents at that time who are, much more risk averse. And were like, you have an amazing job with an amazing company. And it was my first learning lesson in something that I think has, stuck with me the whole career, which is be passionate about what you do. I mean, I always say I am nothing if not passionate. And I can't imagine having a job or a career that I am not fired up about, because I'm fired up about it, I get other people fired up about it. And, we've talked about this before, that's my purpose. That's one of the reasons for me being here.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a really good learning lesson.
Fuel. When you are fueled, you can fuel others.
Right.
And so finding your why, finding your purpose in the work that you're doing it makes everything else so much easier, and it makes work more fun.
Right. Totally. And, that was a big time for me to learn that sometimes you need to rock the boat a little, because I kind of went out of what was considered norm and went through an alternate channel to try to land a job in the same company, still in P&G, but in brand management. And I really fought for it. I really grabbed onto advocates and figured out how to do it. My dad was a little like, you're really like rocking the boat. If you don't get this, you probably have ruffled a lot of feathers. Mm. And I was like, but I have to, I have to try, I have to go for it. Yeah. So, all things said and done, I did move into brand management, and I was like, this is my path. Awesome. This is my path.
Sometimes the people who are closest to us say things like that to protect us and to, with the best of intentions. But sometimes we have to be able to say, no, I'm going for it. It's what I know I need to do. So,
right. Yeah. And you start to identify, the tendencies. I was young, and so I hadn't identified all the tendencies in the people in my life, right? Like, I have an aunt who is a CFO at a major global law firm who, on the flip side, throughout my career has been the one, like, every time I say I'm going for it, she's like, go girl. Yeah. And then I have other people who are much more conservative. So it's good to get a lot of different perspectives, but aggressive, conservative, don't rock the boat, they each have their lenses and all good input, but it's in here at the end of the day.
And here you're pointing to
my gut.
Your gut. That's what I thought. Yes.
My gut. Yes. It's all in my gut. And that's served me really, really well throughout all the chapters. Mm-hmm. My next chapter was leaving P&G because we had Colin, and we decided we were a little too far away from family, being in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. And I took a job at a really small company, which is very different than 100,000 people at P&G. It was about 100 people. Wow. And that was a really interesting time. It was a big job, and I was super young. And I learned a ton from it about how to lead a team and about how to create something from scratch, which you don't really do at the biggest companies. Mm-hmm. And ultimately there too, it was more of a B2B role. Mm-hmm. And I really missed the consumer piece of it. I missed a big company. I missed, being around other people that could really teach and mentor me. I missed the consumer, insight piece. Yeah. So that was another case then where, we left, and I got a different job here in Chicago, also from someone I had worked with before.
Very important, those connections. But two things that you just said. One is this idea of like a skill toolbox. Yeah. And with every job that you have, and in every chapter, you're adding new skills into that toolbox that are setting you up for the next thing.
Right.
And the more clarity you have over, some idea of what that next thing, what your dream is, the more you know what skills you want to put in.
I always think, because I'm a super visual person too, I always think about it like a quiver on my back, and I'm like grabbing arrows. And I think about that with the people that I watch too, because I also think I'm a really good observer of other people. And so I watch a lot, and I think then I learn really fast from that. I watch what works for certain people and what doesn't work for other people, and the skills that people have, like, oh, that person's really analytical, let me kind of learn from that, or that person's a really great communicator, let me learn from that, that person really understands how to wire an organization to get things done, let me really learn and understand from that. So all of these different things that you can pick up from observing kind of the best and the worst
That's
along the way.
That's awesome. And I think also just being in companies and being around people who are being proactive, who are doing great things in their career, it gives you that motivation. It gives you those mentors along the way. That's so exciting. And sometimes the best way we know what we want is when we experience what we don't want or what you missed. That's when you started to really get a little clearer on the consumer piece of it.
That absolutely. I mean, those are the biggest times, the times where I was like, oh, wow, I'm off track. And, that time for me I was like the lowest of the low. That was probably a low point of my life. I mean, I felt really devastated. I felt like I had screwed up my career and I didn't know how to get out. And I was trying all sorts of things, like, trying to apply at this company. Well, we don't even interview anyone that doesn't have an MBA, or trying to get into this company. Well, we don't take anybody who hasn't been part of this other thing, or, and I just was getting doors slammed on me right and left. And I just remember being devastated, I think is the best word. Like, I had just screwed everything up and I wasn't going to be able to fix it.
And how did you manage to get out of that?
So many people that I kept in touch with, that there was one particular person who, I think saw a lot in me when we worked for P&G and helped me get different roles there, had kept in touch and really wanted me to come to work for Kellogg's. And so, the time wasn't right, and the time wasn't right. This is a timing thing, right? Timing is everything.
Yes.
And we can talk about lots of examples about that. But, then I just needed to be patient a little bit. I think, like, it was a good learning lesson that just because things weren't working like in 3 months didn't mean that I couldn't fix it. It just was going to take a little bit of time.
And sometimes at certain chapters, we make trade-offs. We make decisions that were the best decision in that moment. And you made that decision for a reason. And it brought you back to Chicago, and everything has unfolded since there. In the moment, it didn't feel good, but you made the best decision that right. You had to make at that time.
Right. And you can undo it. I've said to you, like, everything in life can be undone except having kids. So you can make decisions. I was able to make decisions then later in life with maybe less fear that I was going to get myself in a spot that I couldn't change. Okay. So there's almost everything can be course corrected. I've learned over my career now, it's all about adjustments, whether it's adjustments in career or adjustments in how you're, managing your home and work. You're constantly adjusting. It's like, you get used to the kind of like, don't get used to anything too much, because it's going to change, or you might want it to change. So that's kind of a muscle, I think, that you build over time that is really helpful.
Okay. That's great. Especially during these times, we've been challenged with that. So tell us what happened after. Keep going on your journey, because I know you have some other interesting twists and turns still coming.
Yeah, I do.
And I know that people want to hear, like, how did you actually end up at Ulta eventually?
Yeah. So I came to work for Kellogg's, and this was another, oh man, I thought I was back on track. I loved it. I loved the people. I loved the brands. I loved the work I was doing. And they decided to move all of the snacks divisions back to Battle Creek. A year after we moved to Chicago, a year after I told my husband that if we moved to Chicago, we would never have to move again, because I had my whole career here. And then went home that night and said, do you want to move to Battle Creek? He said, no. I said, yeah, I know, me either. Okay. No offense to everyone who lives in Battle Creek who might be on the phone, because it's an awesome city, and Kellogg's is such a great company. That's why I was so bummed. and then I took a short hop over to ConAgra, but then, one of my long-term mentors, Carla Hassan, who is now the CMO at Citi, called me and said, okay, I've got a position I think would be good for you at PepsiCo.
So she was your mentor from Kellogg's?
She and I worked together at Kellogg's. Yeah.
I don't think I ever realized that after all these years. Okay.
Yeah. And then she went to PepsiCo, and there just wasn't something right at my level at the time. So, she was one of those people who saw me in me before I did, and brought me into a position at PepsiCo. And that chapter was, that's where I met you, and we got to work on cereals together.
Yeah.
That chapter was so amazing, because I got to move into a lot of different roles. And pretty quickly, I started in a channel role, working on Sam's Club and Costco, and really learned a lot there. But it was very different and very out of my comfort zone. Worked on innovation, worked on cereals, worked on oatmeal. So all of that was awesome. And I got to really learn from awesome people, super smart, great leaders. Like, Jen and I shared like cubes right across from each other.
Oh my gosh, right. We had like those awesome, sweet, big cubes in the back.
We did. I know. And that was such an amazing time. It was really an awesome time of learning for me, and doing new things. And I think like leadership to the next level for me was kind of what I learned: how to be more of an organizational leader, how to be more of a vision setter. Mm-hmm. I learned a lot about developing brand purpose, and we worked a lot on brand purpose at that time. So that was really incredible. And ultimately, I had a really big job before I left there. But it was one of those time periods where I'd say I lost sight of who I was. I kind of lost sight of who I was as a leader. I definitely lost sight of who I was as a mother. And I had kind of some bad aha moments, even with the kids, where I was like, who am I? This is not who I want to be. I'm not happy. I feel tired. I feel lost.
Was there a defining moment story that you remember that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't tell you that I might ask you that, but it's because I have some of those myself, and I think they are I call them tiny daggers in the heart.
Yeah. Yeah. The straw that broke the camel's back for me was a little itty bitty thing that had gone wrong in a launch. And we were on the phone at like 9:30 at night, with the leadership team talking about this. And the boys were coming into my office at home, and I was on this call, and it was super intense.
And how old were your boys at that time?
Boy, let's see, maybe 10 and 8. Yeah. I mean, they were little.
Yeah.
And one of them was sick. I can't remember now which one, sick with a cold. And so like runny nose, like kept coming in, and I was like out, like, you cannot talk to me right now.
Weren't you in the bathroom, or wait, was this before you got to the bathroom?
Yeah, no, before. And my husband was gone. I can't remember if he was at class or, he coaches basketball. So he was doing that. He came home at 9:45 or something like that. And I had just hung up. And he asked me, what was going on with the boys? Why were they up? Had they eaten dinner? And I just was like, I don't know who I am anymore.
Yeah.
I just, and honestly, it was the next day that I resigned.
Oh my gosh.
And so I truly had an aha moment. And I felt like I needed to take such a step away in order to kind of rebuild myself.
Thank you for sharing that, by the way. Did you just like feel your heart when you were sharing that? Was it like?
Yeah, because it chokes me up, but like those are the things, right?
And we have to listen to them. Like those are the things we have to listen to eventually.
One of the things that I promised myself after, doing a lot of soul searching after that, and we can talk about that too, was to never, ever let myself get in that situation again. To not let myself get that bad. because I had been feeling like that for like 9 months.
And how have you done against that commitment to yourself?
I've done pretty well, actually. I think now, now I recognize it more, and I know how to balance myself out a little bit. I know the things I miss. I know when my anxiety level gets super high, and I know, I need to do things like close the computer for the weekend and, or take a day or go somewhere with my husband, and it's just little things like that you kind of, when you're in it, you lose sight of it. And I recognize it in myself more.
Yeah. And those moments that you just described, I bet there are many women on the phone, especially moms, but maybe even not moms, maybe even people and men too, who've just had something where it's like, oh my gosh, eye-opening, something needs to change here. And those are life-changing moments.
Absolutely.
So then because you were kind of trying to regenerate yourself, what did you do to kind of get back?
I remember going for a walk the day after, actually my husband and I were planned to go away for the weekend. So when we came back and, I spent 2 or 3 more weeks wrapping up, I remember going for a walk the first day after I was done. And I felt like, wow, I can breathe. Like, this is what I've been missing. I haven't been able to breathe. So I spent some time on myself, just trying to get, feel healthy again and feel, a sense of calm again, because I felt at that time like I couldn't enjoy anything. I mean, we would go to weddings and I was like, this is not enjoyable. Birthday parties, not enjoyable. So it was like all the joy got sucked out of me, and, trying to rejuvenate that was a process. And, that at that time, I actually worked with a coach, a life/career coach, for about 6 months. And we did it, speaking of virtual, she actually lived in Florida. And at that time, people didn't really do virtual, but I was like, sure, let's do it. We didn't video conference, but we just did it by phone.
Yeah.
And she helped me in that 6 months really figure out, who am I as a leader and as a, career person? Who am I as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, as a daughter, as a sister? And some of the things that were missing, because at that point, I identified one of the big things that was missing was creativity. The job had changed so much for me that it became not about the creative parts of brand management anymore. It became about everything else, which I love the everything else, but I can't have it in absence.
Right.
Of the
You've
creative
learned
parts.
another learning you've, come across in your career. Yeah.
Totally. And so getting in touch with
non-negotiable. It's almost like you've learned that that's a non-negotiable now.
It's totally a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
So that helped me look at every, opportunity from then on differently, because as much as I really love strategy and leadership, the intersection of that with creativity, and I think they're all art forms.
Yeah.
And the intersection of those 3 is like the non-negotiable for me.
Interesting.
And I can't have one, I can't have one piece missing, but
found your sweet spot.
That was totally my sweet spot. Because I'm visual, I think about it like the Venn diagram.
Yeah.
And that's the sweet spot. And I had to do a lot of things, I joke about that time, and I was doing all sorts of weird things, but my husband's super supportive. He was never like, you're losing your mind, but I was like, I'm going to take an acting class. I'm going to do some modeling and acting. I'm going to do interior design and make money at it. And, he's like, you can do anything you want.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's great to have someone like that in your life. But that was a time of kind of doing all of that. Just
trying things.
Yeah. Like things that I had always wanted to do. And I was like, hey, if I don't do them now, I'll never do them.
I so much believe that the best medicine for anxiety is action, is just like taking action, trying things, imperfect action. And so I love that you kind of you allowed yourself to explore. And I just want to tell you, because you're probably not following the chat that people are thanking you for opening up and sharing some of that personal story with us. And of course, coming from my perspective as a coach, I would be curious to hear how having a coach helped you through that process.
Yeah. We met, like from what I remember, we met on the phone every other week. And it started with a lot of, reflection exercises, which was helpful because, in those times you either have lost sight or you don't know exactly how to think about the next step. And I was clearly at a crossroads.
Well, and you're on autopilot for so long. You're just trying to get through each day. Who has time for reflection?
You have zero time. And to have somebody kind of lead you through it, like, how do I even think about this when you're so like, is really important, because that person can, calm you down, give you an objective perspective, hear you, because you really need, I think at those crossroads, you really do need somebody that's objective. Because, when I was talking about, like, my husband has a certain lens, my dad has a certain lens, my aunt has a certain lens, my sister has a certain lens.
Absolutely.
You kind of need somebody to be objective and just help you reflect your own self.
Yes, totally agree. And you know what? The other thing I always say, a benefit of coaching is that the entire conversation gets to be about you. You don't have to be, when you're with a friend, you're like, oh, I'm talking too much, I should really let her talk. No, it's all about you.
Exactly. Exactly. And that whole process, at times it was emotional, because I was kind of trying to dig into all the stuff that I just talked about. Right. And at times it was inspiring. And at times it was, challenging, because I know you talk about, like, someone to help you make a plan and to be accountable to that plan.
Right.
When it's very easy to, let 1 month ride into the next, ride into the next, ride into the next. Right.
I mean, here we are in October. Can that even be possible? Yes, that happens. Oh. And then it's a year. Then it's a year that goes by and another year that goes by. And yeah, right. I totally agree with the action, the plan, the accountability.
Right. Yep. Right.
So go on with your journey and your story.
That was a tough time, but wow, I learned a lot. I think those time periods, you really learn the most about yourself. The things that, you really need, that really fuel you. And I also learned that sometimes it's okay to do some wacky things that reignite you. You've got to refuel. It's like the marathon thing that we talked about at the beginning. Like, sometimes you just don't have it, you lost it, and you've got to get refueled. So I was also doing consulting at the time, because I knew that I probably wasn't going to be, I wasn't going to be an interior designer forever. So doing some, it's okay to be doing a couple things at one time. And I was consulting for PepsiCo. I did some other consulting things. I started consulting with GFK, and kind of had, my hands in both worlds, which was important, because you don't want to lose, if you think you might continue to go down a path, you don't want to lose too much traction.
Yeah, definitely. Say more about that, actually.
I think that my ability to then, pivot into my next role, then I went to work full time for GFK, and then, be able to pivot that into Ulta Beauty.
We're almost there to the Ulta part.
There. It's a lot of chapters, but I think
talk about losing the traction, because I think that is something a lot of people fear, is like, okay, I've got all of this under my belt already. How could I consider pivoting at this point? I don't know if that's where you were going with it, but.
Well, I think two things. One, because I was doing all of the design work and everything to refuel myself, I wanted to keep myself in the world of, brand management and business enough to A, continue to make contacts, but B, continue to have continuity on a resume when I need it, and to not be able to, have a weird, wacky thing appear to other people. Yes. Right. So you might want to think about that as you're doing your alternate things. Yeah.
Like parallel pathing it for a bit. We've talked about that so much in the world of innovation and product development, parallel pathing. I think that's so smart, and something that it still gives you what that part of your career gives you. And it allows you to feel some security there. And, there were still things about it that you really loved. So obviously,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And at that time with consulting, I was able to do actually more of the things that I loved. I was doing strategy, innovation strategy, brand design strategy. So I was able to do that in lots of different industries. And then on the flip side, doing the things that were refilling me creatively. So it was an important time of kind of rebuilding those things and keeping one foot in kind of the path I was on. And then went to work for GFK. At that time, I was like, this is, a great opportunity for me to practice doing all of those things that I loved in lots of different industries, because I started to get the sense that maybe consumer packaged goods wasn't going to be my next step, that I was ready to do something else. I felt a little like, things would come up, jobs would come up in consumer packaged goods. And I felt like, I don't know, been there, done that.
Right.
I'm not that excited about that. Back to my gut. So going to GFK gave me the opportunity to do things in a lot of different industries, which I think was key to me being able to hit the ground running when I then went into beauty and retail, when I had never done that before.
Right.
So
how everyone wants to know, how did you actually get, well, you didn't start as the CMO, but how did you transition into that role? Because it's a theme that you've been planting the seed on all along. And I think it's probably going to be a key piece of advice that you give. But
yeah, absolutely. It's about the bricks that you lay early in your career. And I've seen it now over and over and over in my career. The people that you make an impression on are your lifeblood to your future opportunity. So this is what happened. Mary Dillon, who is our CEO and has now been at the company about 7.5 years, give or take, came from US Cellular to Ulta Beauty, but she had been at PepsiCo when I joined,
me too,
her.
yeah.
You worked with
Some
her
of us
longer
on the
than
phone had the joy of working with Mary, and I'm planting a seed right now that I want Mary to be one of my guests sometime, and you need to help me with that.
That would be awesome, right? Yeah. I mean, talk about what an amazing person to learn from for the past almost 6 years. I'm like,
but you are that person now too. You are becoming that now for everyone coming after you, which is so amazing.
I try to be, I aspire to be, because having an impact on people is like the thing that is, gets me out of bed every day. But so she went from US Cellular to Ulta Beauty, and I had seen that in the news, and I thought, wow, that's interesting. I didn't work with her for long at PepsiCo, but I worked with her for long enough to understand how all of you who had worked with her for much longer felt about her.
Mm-hmm. And I remember people crying. Like, I remember being in the conference room when she told us she was leaving, and literally, like, everyone was crying. I mean, what a feeling as a leader, right? To have that sort of impact as a leader.
Absolutely. I remember that, Jen, because that's where, I had only been there for like 3 or 4 months. So I had interacted with her for only just a brief thing, like she wouldn't even remember my name from then. And when that was the reaction, when she said she was leaving, I was like, wow. Mm-hmm. So when I saw that she went to Ulta Beauty, I thought there must be something cool going on there. Mm-hmm. And then Dave Kimball, who you and I both worked with at PepsiCo, and I worked with him and then I worked for him. Mm-hmm. Until he left to go to take the chief marketing officer role at Seventh Generation. Mm-hmm. And then I read that he went to Ulta Beauty, and I thought, wow, okay, there is really something going on here. So I reached out to him, and we had kept in touch. Really important.
Really important, yes.
Really important. I was just talking with my older son last night about creating a LinkedIn account. Oh, wow. And how important connections are, and that he should be mining my LinkedIn account. Yeah, all of these tools that we didn't even have.
Right. Right.
We were, phone calling. But I reached out to him and I said, if you're ever considering building your leadership team there, I would love for you to consider me, because I think that would be a dream for me with the two of you and with, an amazing business. Let's keep in touch. And he said, yeah, I definitely will, because I want to build the team, and I just haven't figured it all out yet because he hadn't been there long. So he said, I'll connect with you when I'm ready. And in all sincerity, I think he meant to. And, this is a learning in, like, you are not the center of everyone else's world.
That's a good one. Like, daily, let's just remind ourselves of that every single day.
Every day. You are not the center of everyone else's world. So 4 months went by, I think, and I reached out to him and said, hey, just checking back in. And they were not only had scoped a role, but they were pretty far along in the process of hiring someone else.
Unbelievable. And
I just think that's such an important learning, because, he forgot or whatever. Who knows what happened. Mm-hmm. And it took me reaching out to get me, top of mind into the consideration set, and, landing what I said right away when I started talking to him about this role. I said to my husband, this is for me. This is made for me. All roads have led to this.
I love that.
So,
yes.
So I really went for it too, Jen. I don't know if I've told you the story of my interview with Mary.
No.
But I know I've told a lot of my internal team, just going for it. I tell my kids too, that, particular story, if I would have waited 2 weeks, a month,
it would have been too late. It's just like this window that you didn't even realize was closing. And yet it was right at that moment.
Right.
It's another reason why we know this role was made for you.
Kismet.
But it took you showing up. It took you showing up, being proactive, not just assuming that because he hadn't gotten back to you, nothing's happening, or they've changed their minds, or whatever that we tend to tell ourselves.
Right. I mean, if anything, my learning was I should have reached out much earlier.
Right.
But thank goodness I reached out when I did. Mm-hmm. And then I interviewed with Mary probably a week and a half after that. And we had a good discussion, and we were going to walk out, and I shook her hand and I said, I really want this job. And she said, I know, I can tell. And then we walked away, and I thought in my head, that was either an awesome ending or terrible.
But it was true. It was true to you.
It was true. And I just wanted it so badly that I was like, this is mine. This is mine.
I love that. Oh, and so of course, one of the reasons why I wanted to get Shelley on here, and I actually use you as an example in my program that I have, which is called 8 Weeks to What's Next. And I use you specifically as an example during the training about that feeling of knowing you were made for this job. And I have your picture in my slides, and I'm like, I remember having drinks with Shelley about 6 months after she got to Ulta, and her saying, I was born for this. And I hadn't gone into coaching yet. And I was like, I want some of what she's having. So yeah, I mean, that is when you actually allow yourself to follow your heart and you put everything into it and you go for it. Yeah. And I love what you said too, that everything, so the whole traction thing and how people feel like I'm going to lose everything I've accomplished if I switch gears. No, all of that stuff is what sets you up for where you are now.
Right. I mean, those really, that's probably the biggest learning of my journey. When people look at like, oh, chief marketing officer of Ulta Beauty, like it was some kind of straight, path, clear ladder. No. And it doesn't have to be. And those things that, were my building blocks or my, arrows in my quiver or my chapters, they all were the pieces that made sure that when I had the job in front of me, that was my dream, that was made for me, that I was able to be the person that, that could make it happen and had the right chapters to be able to be successful.
The foundation you had created, it takes time to create the foundation. But the thing I love right now is with online learning, there's so many skills we can be building
Right.
online, even while we're in other jobs. I mean, there's a lot more at our fingertips now than ever before to continue to add skills to our toolbox.
I think that's one of the great things that we've, shifted gears in right now. And the thing that I hope sticks. Yeah. Because, think about seminars and things like that we typically had to go to. And then you had to be really picky and choosy. Like, I don't know, which ones am I going to take the time and money to fly to, even if your company was paying for it. Right. And now it's just the norm. And hopefully it will be for good, to be able to access those things or part of them, the things that really, are really meaningful to you to learn and grow. Because that's another thing that I tell my boys. They talk a lot about college or even high school. And I'm like, the whole point is you learn how to learn. And I'm not done learning. And I want them to see it. And it's actually been another silver lining for them to kind of have a front row seat to my career over the past months, because they're like, okay, one, I truly understand how hard she works. Not just that I'm gone and then I'm home, but they're seeing it. And two, that I constantly am studying, learning, reading, they're seeing that much more. And I think that's really important for people early in their career to know and see.
Right. Things don't just come overnight to us. And we might go a few minutes over because I want to share some things. But before I do that, I just think people would love to hear a little bit about how Ulta Beauty has responded to COVID, and how is like this whole idea of doing a virtual TV commercial shoot is just beyond me. So that's a whole new thing to learn. So maybe give us, and I'm going to check the Q&A real quick while you maybe share kind of how Ulta is standing up to everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, this has been a wild ride. I think the key to us being able to weather this from a brand standpoint, a brand messaging standpoint, is what we have built over the past years. And that's one, the team, that we've worked so hard to build a world-class team internally and agency teams, really, really hard. So I think my lucky stars every day that we put in all of that work. And then two, we worked really hard to build a very clearly articulated and inspiring brand purpose. The idea that we use the power of beauty to bring out the possibilities that lie in every person.
Love it. And
that ethos, which is our true north as a company, not a marketing communications platform, the true north as the company, helped us to quickly pivot and pull forward things that were hyper relevant for March and April and May, because we became, even more content forward and even more fluid in how much work we were putting out, and doing it in a really scrappy way because things were changing so fast. So we at that time, we quickly pivoted into a platform called See Beautiful Today, which was the idea that even when we have dark, confusing times, we can see beauty around us, and that Ulta Beauty can help you see that.
It's amazing.
So that was, we had planned on doing a new campaign now this fall. We pulled it to March and literally pulled it off in 3 weeks. So flexibility, agility, but fast forward, the work that we just released at the beginning of September, we think is really powerful. We were already headed in this direction, which is, serendipitous, I guess, but understanding that the superpowers of beauty, of joy, togetherness, and self-care, wrapped in this idea of optimism, were things that the world really needed. Then we hit the pandemic, and the world needed them even more.
Right.
So we were able to build our Where Dreams Begin campaign around those ideas, and have a very, inspiring, uplifting, we call it Be the Light. This is our year of being the light. And I think we can continue to be that. So we're really proud of all the work that we've done along the way, and the bigger campaign. And you're right, virtually, we shot the TV campaign virtually. So that was really interesting. It was virtual chat rooms with the agencies and with our team and with the production company, watching via our computer, the cameras, camera A, camera B, and being able to input that way, having the makeup artist and the hairstylist, in their masks, in their car, like, is this good? It was a very different world, but it worked surprisingly well. But again, it was really about having the A team. Like, we had the A team production. We had Malik Saeed, who's an incredible director, who does an amazing job creating things that are both epic and intimate. So he was really key, and we were able to pull it off. Which now my boss is like, so you could just do that all the time, right?
That'll be the question, right? That'll be the question. Save us lots of money.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
Well,
but
so
it's been good. It's been a lot of really good learning.
I think one of the things that you said about having a really solid purpose already in place as a company, and knowing so solidly what your values are as a company and your true north, is what seemed to allow you to respond and not react. I often make the difference between those two words.
Yes, absolutely. That's a really good way to put it, because I think I know a lot of companies were reacting and had a really hard time getting their footing.
Right.
I know this from partners we work with who work with lots of different companies, and I feel really proud of the way we were able to respond and not have to react and have unsure footing. We felt, as crazy as it was, we felt very sure of our footing.
Well, and that, just to make a little pivot, and I'm going to ask you in a few minutes, Shelley, to give us like maybe your 3 top pieces of advice for all of us. But while you're thinking about that, we talked about this a bit earlier. Like, I think there's a translation in what you're talking about to all of us individually with our careers, and how we really can take the time, like you did with that coach, to understand what our values are and really our own purpose. And then that becomes the compass for everything. It allows us to make decisions that feel better and allow us to really live the life we want to live.
Okay, so it's hard to boil it down to 3.
I know. Well, it doesn't have to be 3 specifically.
Yeah,
People
okay.
will listen to you.
No, I think, I was thinking over the weekend about one of the quotes that I really like, and it's a George Bernard Shaw quote. And the quote is, "Life isn't about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself." And I think that is super insightful, because as much as it is about getting in touch with who you are, what you love, what your values are, that's all core. But then it's what you create for yourself, about yourself. You're like a continual, masterpiece in progress. So I love that quote. And I would, my piece of advice there is to think about it that way, about creating yourself.
Yep.
And then I'd say the second thing, this is something that I tell my boys all the time. As much as you guys want to be successful, and I love that, and you want to work hard, and I love that, do it with something that you're passionate about, whatever that thing is at the time, because it does change over time. But be passionate about what you do, because there are only 2 things that really matter: being passionate about what you do and feeling like the people around you are the people who encourage, love, support you. Like, those are the 2 choices in life that matter. Right. The biggest choices, but still, I tell them that because they're at crossroads, because they're 20 and 18. And it's like, how do you know when
they're
you're that
entering age? They're like, that's why I like to think about these chapters. And I love that you use that word, because I use that word a lot too. Like, there's all of these pivotal moments in our career that, right. Yeah,
exactly. And so I'd say the third one then is kind of related to that, because you don't need to, fill yourself with pressure that the choice is going to be like that thing that you are so passionate about, because it's not always. It's just about, it's about the long game.
Yeah.
It's about the long game. It's about getting there. It's about having more time in your life where you're passionate about what you do and love what you do. Then don't, because, everything's not perfect all the time.
We've all had those, what we would call rotations in our jobs where there was something to learn, even though we weren't having as much fun during that time. Yes.
Exactly. So it's not all like glory and roses and perfect and, so it's about, more of your time,
Yes.
more of your time spent on happy and on things you're passionate about rather than less.
Mm-hmm. And I think if you can tie, what was that?
Because it's, back to the idea of it's chapters.
It's chapters. And when you get really clear on your why, then sometimes even when you're in a role or a position that you don't love as much, you can find a way to connect it.
Right.
Your why. Someone in my program who's actually on here tonight, but there's something that she's been wanting to explore, and it at first didn't seem like an obvious thing for her to explore until she really figured out what her why was. And part of this particular thing that she wants to look into is that it financially fuels her to do her why.
Yes.
So, there's a lot of different ways to think about that, but it's, you got to get clear on the why before you can really do that.
Well, I mean, no doubt about it. Sometimes things are just a means to an end, and that's okay too, just as long as, again, it's about the long game.
Thank you so much, Shelley. It was such a pleasure and just fun for me even, because we rarely get the chance to go down memory lane like this. And
right. Especially now.
Oh, I know.
So it was awesome. It's really fun to share, especially, with a friend who knows a lot of the stories, but doesn't know all the stories.
Right.
So it was really fun to do, and hopefully valuable for everyone who listened in.
Thank you for listening to Spark Your Power. Remember, the best way to predict your future is to create it. Don't waste another day, my friend, tolerating a job you don't love. I believe you were put here for a reason. It's your job to figure out what that is and go do it. Go to your favorite podcast app, hit that subscribe button, and leave us a review. It would mean the world to me. And if you found your spark today, then go ignite someone else by sharing this podcast. See you next time.